All right, and we are live on our side. Top of the morning, everyone. Thank you, as always, for joining us. As usual, feel free to continue to throw your LinkedIn in the chat, connect with some other practitioners, meet some new folks who are like-minded and doing the same work that you're doing. Also, as you have questions throughout today's session, please feel free to use the Q&A. We will be looking to spend about 5 minutes towards the end of the session to answer those. But really, I am excited to be presenting alongside our guest today. So really, what we're talking about today is AI and M&A in practice. And so I'm very happy to be joined by Dan Furman from the Vertex companies. Now, as a quick note, Vertex has built one of the more intentional M&A practices in their spaces. They're integration first, relationship driven, and AI has become a key part of how they execute on that. Now, without any further ado, I would love to hand it over to Dan Furman to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Dan Furman. I'm with the Vertex companies, and I'm Integration Program Manager. So a little bit about Vertex. Vertex is a professional services firm specializing in expert, forensic, construction project advisory, and compliance and regulatory services. So what we do is we help our clients remain compliant, manage projects effectively, and resolve disputes.
And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but you began at Vertex as an intern, right?
That's right. So I joined Vertex. Well, I was an intern, a summer intern when I was in college. In 2015, I joined the company to help build out a new service area. I worked a bit with each of our service areas since then, and now this is what I do.
And so tell me, at what point did your focus actually shift towards M&A?
My focus shifted towards M&A in 2021, when our acquisitive growth really began to take off. So at the time, I was given the opportunity to work with our M&A team to revamp our due diligence process a little bit and establish our integration program. And now we have a dedicated corporate development team with an integration forward approach.
Incredible. So you've really been there through the full ride. Now, Dan, could you, without giving anything too proprietary, could you give us a quick snapshot of Vertex's M&A program and what makes your approach different from most teams?
Sure. Well, I think one thing that makes our approach interesting is that our team is led by our chief strategy officer, who's a founder with Vertex. We also have another founder on the team, and we have founders and leaders who have come with acquisitions. And then, of course, there's me and another teammate who comes from the operations side.
And given that, folks have come in via acquisitions and coming up through the company, I would imagine that your team really embodies Vertex's culture.
We do, but also what makes the team unique is we've got these leaders and founders who have come with acquisitions and they've been through integrations with us. So it brings a real unique perspective to the team, I think. And, on top of that too, we talk about our integration focus. I think one of the things that makes our team interesting is that this dedication to integration is also fully embraced by our PE partner.
Which is one thing that we've discussed in the past, and I always thought was incredible. But not only that, but we've talked about how your team's approach to diligence isn't just about getting the deal done. Tell me more about that.
Yep. So, there are questions that just need to be asked in diligence, but we really try to frame our diligence so it lends itself to an integration plan prior to closing, right? In parallel with that diligence, we're also actively discussing with sellers the opportunities that we think neither one of us could get alone and how we're going to pursue them.
So in short, would you say that the time to plan for opportunities and align on how the businesses will come together isn't post-close, it's actually pre-close?
Completely agree, Dave.
Incredible. Now, Dan, tell me a little bit, before AI entered the picture, which aspects of your process could have been improved?
So I'll tell you right off the bat that I used to spend a lot more time prospecting and researching targets. Just hours of internet searches, repeat results to sift through, and just a lot of information that was not easy to find. It's now more available, a lot quicker.
A lot quicker. And how about with diligence?
And with diligence, I would say we always strive to make concise requests and not to ask for the same information more than once. And, I'll be succinct and just say that AI has really helped us with this.
Incredible. Now, I think the big question, could you walk us through how your team is actually using AI today from like pipeline, early stages, all the way throughout diligence?
For sure. So for prospecting, we've discussed how it helps us identify quality targets in a fraction of the time. It can also help refine outreach. But what I'll say about that is that your outreach in the end needs to be personalized and it needs to be sincere.
Especially with the age of AI and automation and volume, I imagine company leaders are becoming a lot less receptive to outreach that is clearly not prepared carefully.
Very desensitized to it. I mean, they're getting bombarded. And what I'll say is AI can really help reveal some valuable insights that you could consider in your outreach. But in the end, it needs to sound like you and it needs to convey genuine interest.
And so the focus is really about bringing value to your messaging. That's incredible. Now, how about with due diligence? How are you using AI there?
So with diligence, I mean, these tools, like I mentioned before, can help refine an outreach. So we like to keep them succinct. We want to make sure we're not missing anything either. Of course, it helps with it identify discrepancies in information that's provided. It's very helpful in performing analysis. The summaries are very helpful. And I'll say too that I've been pretty blown away by the contract review capabilities that I've seen.
And out of curiosity, have you found like are there other ways the company can benefit from like the way your corp dev team uses AI?
Yeah. And, without being too specific here, I'll say that there's information born out of the M&A process that other teammates need, outside of where we maintain this information. So we've actually worked with the DealRoom AI features to summarize this information, highlight what's needed, and share it with those who need it on a continued basis.
And so really here we have a use case that goes beyond M&A, but that actually came from your M&A workflows. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, when AI takes manual work off your plate, what do you actually do with the time? This is a hot topic question I've heard from a lot of folks.
Yep. So outside of deals that are going on, I mean, it just gives us more time to identify quality targets and perform thoughtful outreach. And then in the time leading up to closing on deals, we're planning integrations and we're talking about how we're going to pursue opportunities together.
And so listening to you, my takeaway is that efficiency and diligence is actually creating space for conversations that actually move the deal forward. Not only that, but it helps in creating lasting value after the close, sitting with seller pre-close to talk about opportunities, joint goals, and what the future looks like together.
Yeah, what it allows us to do is spend time developing trusting relationships. And that's what we corp dev folks bring to the table that AI really can't replace, developing these trusting relationships.
Yeah, and if I were to put myself in the seller's shoes during diligence, I could see myself getting really anxious about like integration, and that could negatively impact a deal, thinking about things like when are we going to move to new systems? How is my team going to be treated? And I can see how it'd be really comforting to proactively have these conversations and like know it would be handled thoughtfully as a seller.
Yeah, the idea is to alleviate concerns so we could spend more time talking about how we're going to come together and pursue opportunities.
Incredible. And how about for the M&A teams who are in this room who are hesitant about using AI or just getting started? Like, what would you tell them? What would your advice be?
Good question. And I was one pretty recently. So, I'm glad to say, like, it's not so scary. What you should do is understand it's not going to replace anything, right? And don't try to use it for everything all at once. Pick small, specific use cases, things that you think could be better, and test AI tools, right? What I'm going to say too is you're still going to have to read and understand everything, right? You can't read Spark Notes and feel confident that you know a book well, right? But these are helpful tools. And in the end, I'll also say recognize the sensitivity of the information that you're dealing with. But have fun treating this like an experiment. This is going to go a lot of different directions, but it's all helpful.
No, it's incredibly helpful, and I really like your perspective there at the end. Like, have fun, experiment. There's a lot that you can do out there with AI, but it's always a real like iterative process and understanding where are the key areas that can help you improve and like really developing that.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, with that, that was a quick little session on some practical use cases, how folks are actually using AI and M&A, and most importantly, what they're doing with the time. With that, we actually have a couple of extra minutes for questions, and I suspected. So would love to hear what's on top of mind for folks. All right. Question from David. At what point in the deal process do you formally start to engage the integration team, and how do you approach integration planning at that point in time? Interesting question for you, Dan.
That's a great question. Our integration team is involved from inception. So there's no official handoff point. All of our team members are involved in every aspect, and that way we're all part of the planning. And like I said earlier, we want to be at a point on day one where we have a plan that everybody's bought into that we can move forward with.
And I think the real interesting part there is not only you and your team are bought into the plan, but the seller is as well, going back to that previous point.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's see what else we have for questions. Roman, where should human judgment override AI recommendations in cyber M&A decisions?
I would say human judgment is paramount. And I would say that AI recommendations should be considered as validation. And
yeah,
if it makes sense, that's the way I think of it. We have a team with people that specialize in making these decisions. AI brings insights. It helps you make sure you're not missing something. But in the end, you're the one making the decisions.
And for folks who've spoken to me before, they'll know that I 100% agree with you. AI is really, it's an augmentation. It's meant to help people move faster so that you can spend your time on some of those more like value added activities, but it should never really be a replacement. And so I think a recommendation is really exactly that. It's a recommendation.
That's it.
Awesome. Let's see what else we have. For you, and this is a great question, when did AI stop being a let's experiment project for your team, and when did it actually begin being part of how you actually work?
Dave, I liked what you said before about it being iterative, because you never want to let go of the reins on anything, but keep using it where it seems to be helpful. Right. So there's some simple things like when you're just doing a search, right? Types of information you want to find out about targets. I mentioned that I'm able to find information quicker. I'm going to continue doing that. And that's kind of my attitude towards all this stuff. But in the end, back to that last question, human judgment, I think, is paramount.
Yeah, absolutely. And without that human judgment, like that's when things get overboard really quickly. And so that's the most paramount piece is experiment, be super iterative, start small, but then I think folks would be surprised by how quickly like a small experiment can actually be something that saves them. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, that's almost an extra hour out of the week. I wish I had an extra hour out of the week.
Yeah, no, it's never going to replace your analysis. It's not going to replace anything. It's going to augment, like you said, Dave. And let it keep augmenting, but question the results you're getting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love that question. Let's see what else we have. Mike, I'm curious how you leverage AI in the integration process, specifically when it comes to better understanding the target company, i.e. key customers, key employees, and relationships.
Okay, so my first thought is that, you end up building a repository of plays, right? They make up your playbook and how you've treated all prior integrations, and you consider what's new about this one and how you're going to do it differently. I think AI can help with that. I would say that, yeah, so it considers historical information in the context of new information. And I think that that's where it can help you plan things effectively. But again, you got to use your judgment.
Yeah, I think the judgment is absolutely the key point here. And I think this is extra interesting with the approach that you and the team take, since you're so involved in the early stages when you're planning integration. I think that really helps without like losing that context layer, because the folks who are going to be ultimately using this information once the deal is closed is actually riding side by side the actual diligence process itself. And so I think that lends itself really well to this question, but it's not easy. I think the question is like, hey, we know how you can leverage AI and what for, but how do you actually make it useful, save you time, so you can move on to the next big thing.
And then back to what we were saying before, that we build trust with sellers in the time leading up to closing. We're actively discussing what's important about their business and how we're going to come together in an effective way. So again, AI could take that past information, the new information that you produced in diligence, and make some good recommendations on how you might want to handle this. But in the end, there's that human aspect that you want to be in control of.
Yeah, and it's interesting. For you, like AI allows you to be more intentional and build more of those human connections, which is almost ironic in its own way. Thank you for the question, Mike. I think we have a couple more. We can do this one more. Another good question. What is the biggest mistake you see corp dev teams making with AI right now?
Over-reliance on AI and less on people. Don't forget how important your team's insights are just based on their own experience in dealing with people. I think we can't let go of that.
Absolutely not. And if there's one takeaway about Dan and I that folks can take from this, it's our stance on AI. It's an augmentation that allows you to almost spend more time being human. It's about how you spend that time and how you use the AI, but it's absolutely a powerful tool, but it could also go haywire real quick. So I think that's awesome.
Agreed.
All righty. With that, just want to say thank you. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you joining us this top of the morning, early afternoon for you. Hope this made a pretty decent lunch session. Also, one thing I want to mention is if you're using AI in your deal process today, we'd love to hear from you. We're running an AI survey right now, which you can find in both the comments, and it should be in a link right below me. Really, again, thank you all for joining us. I hope this was informative and got you, noodling on what are the ways that you could use M&A in your day-to-day, and really get that ball rolling there if you haven't already. It's definitely a hot topic. And also a giant thank you to Dan. Dan, really appreciate you joining us. I think this was a great session that people can get some great takeaways from.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave, and the rest of the team.
Absolutely. Now, everyone, just sit tight. We are going to have our next session starting shortly with the fantastic Sapritha and Ashley from the DealRoom team. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.